Hello, and welcome to Japanese Craft Beer Reviews. Today we're going to look at a beer that is kind of special. The brewery is located in Belgium and is kind of a classic brewery. It was Michael Jackson, the British writer, not the pop star. Michael Jackson sort of discovered Belgian beer for the British and the Americans in the 1970s, 60s, and 70s when he visited there and started writing about them. And this is one of the breweries that really impressed him. It's called Rodenbach, and we're going to look at 4 different beers from Rodenbach. And the first one will be the classic Rodenbach, and then we'll look at the Grand Cru. And then we'll look at a kind of special one called Alexander, and then finally a beer called Frutage. And but very briefly about the Rodenbach Brewery. It was the first Rodenbach. You notice the name doesn't sound particularly Belgian. And in fact, the first Rodenbach came from Germany as a military doctor during the time when Belgium was ruled by Austrian Empire, and they kind of set down and made roots in Belgium, and then the brewery was developed in 1820, or bought by the family in 1820, and it's located in West Flanders in the town of Roeselare. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it exactly. Roesale. I'll show you a map here of it. And the brewery stayed in the family until 1998 when it was sold to Palm. And now it apparently is owned by a group called the Swinkle Family Brewers. And they make a variety of beers, not too many. But again, the first one is the Rodenbach Original, which is now called Classic, and then Grand Cru at 6.4%, and then a number of vintage beers that they make. They put out in limited editions there, and Vin de Céréales, which is a 10%er, quite strong, and Character Rouge, which is macerated with cherries after some aging, and Alexander, and then Frutage, and we're going to look at 4 of those now. What they're most famous for is the use of oak foeders, which are not cask, but they're huge, called tuns, T-U-N, and they're massive. The biggest one, or the average one, hold like 4,700 gallons of beer. And the beer is primarily, I think, fermented in steel first, and then aged in these oak foeders. And here's some pictures of them. They're absolutely huge. And Rodenbach is the only brewer that relies completely on those foeders to age their beers. Some of them are 150 years old, and they have, here's a trivia question for you, 294 of them in the brewery currently. And they became famous over the years for not only that, for use of these massive foeders to age their beers, but also supplying yeast to places like Westvleteren and Dedale. So they did a lot of work with other breweries as well. The oak foeders, of course, what they do is these are used over and over and over, and of course over the years they've developed their own varieties of microflora, primarily Pediococcus and in some cases Brettanomyces. And the Pediococcus will give a kind of tart, sort of astringent note to the beer. And so let's look at 4 of these beers in turn from Rodenbach, a very special brewery, and I'm really happy to review them now for the first time. And here is another beer, the second beer we're reviewing from Rodenbach. It's called Rodenbach Grand Cru. It is like the Rodenbach Classic. It is a sour Flemish ale, or Flanders Red, or an Oud Bruin, and this one is 6%, as opposed to 5.2 for the Rodenbach Classic, and 35 international bitter units. So a little bit jumped up in alcohol and in bitter units. This one costs 398 yen where I bought it. And I would say that's probably around, let's say $3.20, maybe, something like that right now. And on Rate Beer, this one has 4,155 ratings, and the average is 3.85, 98 percentile for all beers on Rate Beer, and 95 for its style, which is sour Flemish ale or Flanders Red. Untapped, 186,467 ratings when I checked, and the average was a little bit lower, 3.66. Often tends to happen, I don't know, with Untapped, beers that aren't so great tend to get higher ratings on Untapped than they do on Rate Beer, and vice versa. If they're beers, that are real classics, they often don't tend to impress the Untapped crowd as much. And let's see, so now this one is a blend of, just as the other one, the Classic was a blend of young and old beer, so this one is too. It is a blend of 1/3 young beer and 2/3 aged beer, aged in the oak foeder. So again, the young beer comes from the steel fermenters, and the old beer comes from the oak foeders, these huge oak tuns. And the average age is 18 months, they claim, and the sourness level is 3.5 out of 5. So I have had this before. I gave it a 4.0. That was a long time ago, almost 10 years ago. Here. And so, shall we give this one a go? I think this is, really a very, very special beer. Again, we're looking at 4 Rodenbachs in a series. Okay, it is a much lighter color than the Rodenbach Classic. It's quite translucent for me here. I can see through the light, kind of a bright sort of reddish brown with a rather thin, almost filmy sort of head. Much different from the Rodenbach Classic. Oh my! This is quite a different experience here. This one has has a lot of wood. You get the wood out of it for sure. The barrel, something like red wine maybe. It smells like it's going to be caramelly. Definitely some vinegar notes in here, and substantial berries as well. Some rich red berries, maybe raspberry or something like that. Okay. Again, we get berries, lots of wood. So again, this aged beer was probably aged for about 2 years or so. In the wood foeders, the young beer, maybe 6 months. So the average is 18 months aging here. Nice tartness, astringency on the tongue. You can feel it grabbing your tongue. That lactic note is quite a bit stronger than in the Classic beer. Kind of earthy in mid-palate. This is a much more intense experience than the Classic, but still it's a more delicate and maybe more complex beer than ones that most U.S. craft brewers tend to produce. The kind of ones that would just blast you out of your chair. And I'm not saying those are not bad, but one example would be Cascade in Portland, Oregon. They make some of the most intense sours you can imagine. They are quite an experience. This is a more delicate, and I would say probably more complex experience than those. Wow. Yeah, I haven't had this in almost 10 years, and I miss you. Yeah, this is really a special beer. Once again, it's called Rodenbach Grand Cru. It's a blend of young and old beer, red ale put into oak foeders and served out after 2 years in oak foeders, and it's really something. I hope you have a chance to try this. You know, no matter where you are, give Rodenbach a look. I think they're available many places, so you can try them out. Okay, so 6%, 35 IBUs, a great classic sort of Flanders red ale. Okay, and we'll be reviewing more of these. I'll have a playlist of the 4 Rodenbachs that I will review. I hope you take a look at those as well. Take care. Bye bye.